Good evening, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. Certainly welcome you again to another episode of Insight. Insight is designed for guests that we have on to give us insightful information, not only in their lives, but in terms of their development, in terms of children, in terms of their families, in terms of ministry. And we bring different people on every week. We've had educators on as well, going to move toward having medical people on to give us specifics as it relates to various things, particularly what we are in now. And we want to be able to invite people to be able to do these things and to give us the information that we need. I just want to let the audience know that Insight will continue, at least for this season, until June the 30th. And we will be off from July and August. July is restful. August is to add nuances to the creativity of this particular program. I should also let you know that Insight is the creative, innovative, informative wing of the Bethlehem Nation. My name is Reverend Larry Kemp, the pastor of the Bethlehem Nation. Again, to have you here, it is good that you are tuned in again. Before I interview my guest, let me just say this, is that it should be noted that we're live on YouTube as well. And so it's on Facebook, but we're live on YouTube. We're only on YouTube. We're live only on YouTube. And so we want you to know that, so you'll be able to catch that there. And the other thing that you should know that when we resume back in September the 1st, my guest is going to be Reverend Carl Washington III, the pastor of the Pilgrim Baptist Church in Nyack, New York. And so we're looking forward to that for the rest of the year. We're looking to get Dr. Jeremiah Wright on, certainly with the help of Dr. Jennifer Jones-Austin. We're working toward getting Aliyah Shabazz, the daughter of Malcolm X, and Dr. Betty Shabazz on as well in a one-on-one discussion. And so we want to congratulate Reverend Dr. John Creedom, the pastor of the Mount Zion Baptist Church in Oklahoma City, who has also been nominated a Commissioner of Ward 2 in Oklahoma. So we applaud him. Dr. John Credo was pastoring here in Brooklyn at the Calvary Baptist Church, and then, of course, has moved on to the Mount Zion Baptist Church, and now he is the Commissioner of Ward 2 of Ardmore, Oklahoma. So we congratulate him. And we want to congratulate Bishop Waylon Hobbs, who is the mayor of Hempstead, Long Island. Bishop Hobbs has worked in law enforcement. He has been a pastor for well over 25 years. And so we're glad to have congratulations to him, his wonderful wife, Donna, and their children. And so glad to see them and see how he develops. Which, I want to ask a question, but I'll hold back on that question now. But and the last thing is, of course, at least for this segment of presentation, is Dr. Kimberly Credit, who passed on. It was devastating for a lot of not just preachers, but certainly for Christendom as well. Kimberly Credit, who preached at the Bethlehem Nation for our church anniversary, September of 2018. She certainly will leave a legacy of always wanting to teach, but always wanting to learn at the same time. And I've always said to the people of the Bethlehem Nation, you should always have a student's curiosity, even if you are a leader. You should always have a student's curiosity. My guest tonight, is Reverend Adrian Reid, pastor of the New Jerusalem Baptist Church in Brentwood, New York, and that is specifically Brentwood, Long Island. The reason why I say Brentwood is because the word Brentwood came into my existence based on the fact of what happened with O.J. Simpson, Brentwood, California. So, Pastor Reid, it's good to have you.
Pastor Camp, it's great to be with you tonight, man.
It is logical that you would be sitting in front of books because, man, I know you love them.
Yes, sir.
And,
yes, sir.
It's good to have you.
Yes, sir.
Pastor Reid, we all know about Kimberly Credit.
Yeah.
Say a word like that. Say a word toward that, if you will.
I wrestled with that. To be quite honest with you, when I got the news, and excuse me, my allergies are bothering me as the season is changing, but
Yeah.
I wrestled with it. I got a call on Monday from a friend in Alabama, and he had told me that she had passed, but he didn't know if it was true as of yet. And then, of course, we started seeing more posts on Facebook, and yeah, it was rough. I literally just purchased two of her books.
Wow.
And that was last month, I believe. And they're here on my shelf now. Well, one of them I'm reading through the book about new pastors. I've been reading through that. So she was a jewel, to be honest with you, a jewel, and will be missed. She will be missed.
Yeah, I understand that on the 19th of this month, she would have been 45 years of age. So certainly a young woman, nevertheless. I want to say to this audience, I've known Reverend Adrian Reid for a long time.
Yes, sir.
And, I've known him, his mother and his father certainly have raised such wonderful children. There's no question about that. His father, Bishop M. Edward Reid, who will be preaching at the Bethlehem Nation on Father's Day morning, and his mother, who a darling of a woman, if there is one. She has always been, over the course of the years, very steady when it comes to placing her hands on her children and her family. So with that, I thank God for both of them producing men like you, and certainly your siblings as well. Now, let me ask you this, Pastor Reid. We always in this format, because in a format we know that preachers preach, but we also know that preachers have various things that they go through in life, as if people would see them as not having life beyond the church or beyond the pulpit. Speak about your formative years, as well as those early years coming up in ministry.
Okay. Well, I sensed the call to preach when I was 4. So it's been in me from really Jeremiah, is my testimony that before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. So 4 years old was play preaching. And then my father licensed me at 10, November 28th, 1998. I would have started sooner, but his words were that in order to be a good preacher, you got to be able to read. And
absolutely,
I'll be honest, I struggled with my reading. And so thank God for my aunt, my mother's older sister, who was an educator. And and forgive my voice,
That's all right, because allergy season for me as well. That's okay.
Yeah. It always happens around this time. But my mother's sister was a school teacher, and she literally just worked with me until I got my reading to a place where it was sufficient enough to be able to. And then finally, my father licensed me to preach. So my formative years, and I can honestly say they were fun, going from church to church, preaching for some of everybody here in the state of New York. My mom used to take me everywhere. I mean, from the Hamptons to the Bronx and beyond, and used to have to carry a milk crate because I was too short to see over anybody's pulpit. So, that my formative years, I'm grateful for them. What you see behind me is as a result of my father's training. He always said, if you're going to be a preacher, a good one, you got to read. And so I've tried my best to build my own library of books and resources. And I thank him for instilling that in me, that you got to read. So my formative years, man, I still think back, and they weren't that long ago, almost 23 years now, that I've been preaching. And I'm honestly thankful for this journey thus far.
Your father is a voracious reader, always has been.
Yeah.
Always has been from the time that I've known him. And it is what someone had said when we were coming up in the ministry together, that at that time, Dr. Melvin Reid was a natural learner. which they said the same thing about Abraham Lincoln, because of a voracious leader,
Yeah.
voracious reader that he is. And so, and the thing about when I look at Reverend Adrian Reid and Mrs. Camp and I and my daughters, we were so proud of him because of the years we've known him. And the thing I remember, one of the things I remember, just a slight thing, is when his father came to preach at the Bethlehem Nation, and Reverend Adrian Reid, still finding himself as a young man, was jumping over one of those benches we had up in the hallway and broke it down. But so I'm glad to be able to have a memory like that and just be able to say how long that I've known him. Now, the initial sermon, you were also standing on a crate. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I was. I was. I still have the picture.
Yeah, I think you got the picture too. Yeah. But it was on that picture. It showed how you were, looking down, and that you were obviously very into the scene. There's the picture right there, and dressed up conservatively as usual, and even from the inception. And so that you can see that picture there. That's Reverend Adrian Reid. And then, man, here's another shot where he was a sharp cat, man. I really was. I mean, look at the hat. I mean, it's like Edward G. Robinson and Humphrey Bogart all over again. And then look at the chain. And there's the chain. You got to have the preacher's chain. So that was really, really, really good.
That picture was actually at Evergreen in Huntington.
In Huntington, Long Island.
Of course, Pastor Washington is my godfather.
Absolutely. What do you remember about the anxiety of that day, preaching at the first initial sermon?
Honestly, that day, I mean, so many emotions, so many. I never forget, we got to the church. It was a Saturday. We got to the church, I want to say earlier in the afternoon, and I literally laid on the floor in my father's office at that time until it was time to come out. Just laid on the floor. I was beyond nervous. My stomach was in knots. Now, that was not the first time I had preached publicly, but that was the inception of my ministry. And so it was serious for me. It was, I didn't want to come before the people as a joke. I know a lot of people had questioned, well, what is this 10-year-old going to do? Because I was an anomaly. There were not many, my age that were preaching. So for me to come out at that time preaching, it was just, it was rough. People had questions and wondered, but by the end of the night, people were assured of the call. And the anxiety was there all throughout, but I'm grateful that I made it through. That's all I can say. I'm grateful I made it through.
At the age coming out as a boy preacher, now I'm sure there's others, so I'm going to make clear on this remark is that you were the first boy preacher I've seen that came out as a boy preacher. And the first one I heard of was Reverend Al Sharpton.
Okay. So, yes.
You were the second one that I know. Now, again, there might be others, but those are the only two that I know as far as my lifetime. So I'm not taking anything from anyone in any part of this country, but I do know that you were the first that I've seen since that happened when Reverend Sharpton was over at the Washington Temple Church of God in Christ.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, what is your opinion of the white evangelicals' resistance as it pertains to the vaccination? White evangelicals. I'm not talking about government. I'm talking about white, and Pastor, I know you hear me. I'm talking about white evangelicals, to which many of our Black preachers were educated by.
Mm-hmm. I will not say that I don't understand anyone's hesitation with the vaccine. I won't say that, but I will say that if it's going to help us in the long run from this virus that has ravaged this world, not just this nation, but this world, I think it's imperative that we encourage people. But of course, when we think about them, yeah, yeah. we've seen so much with them when it comes to their silence on issues of race. And so it came as no surprise to me that there was pushback on this whole vaccine, pushback on being in their buildings, which you and I know the church never closed. You know, we were always open. We're still open. But it proves to us that there still may be two separate churches, that the Black church is here and the white church is here, and we've got to figure out a way to rid ourselves of that and come together, because it's not helping our cause in the long run. And so their pushback really comes as no surprise, to be honest with you. No surprise.
Yeah. So now, with all of this happening during the pandemic, how has the New Jerusalem Church been adjusting? Because I know other houses of worship, including those in the synagogue and those brothers and sisters from the Islamic world, have also had adjustment. How is New Jerusalem making its adjustment?
I am, and some of them may be watching. I'm praying we shared it on our church page. I am a proud pastor. It's been almost 3 years now, and I watched them literally make every shift. When we first started, it was conference call because we didn't have some of the technology that we needed in order to, do live stream and all of that. But eventually we did get a hold of that, and they made the shift to conference call, to live stream, to drive-in service. I mean, every everything we put in place. And again, forgive my voice, but everything that we put in place, they have been, I mean, superb. They have not stopped in their giving. Their faithfulness has been superb, even in Bible study. We are now on Zoom, so they can watch in the comfort of their homes. And we've been growing. And I'm honestly, I couldn't ask for anything more than that. So I've heard of other pastors who are struggling during this time, and I feel for them. But I thank God, and this is not to disparage anybody, but I thank God.
I understand.
That it has not been our testimony. New Jerusalem has a great foundation, and so that's really what has helped us during this time.
My guest tonight, Reverend Adrian Sean Reid, the pastor of the New Jerusalem Baptist Church in Brentwood, New York. The Cash App will flash on the screen. I would ask, even as I am talking to him, that you would be a blessing to him, and that you would certainly show your appreciation and love. And you see it there, $ AD Reid, and be a blessing to this young brother. Now, passed over the years, there'll always be an observation as relates to ministry. Some we can make criticism of, and some it would have us to look at the landscape, to kind of be able to make, as you would talk, as your church made a shift, and sometimes preachers would have to make a shift as well. What are some of the changes that you have observed in ministry coming up, which differs from what you observe now? What you observed then and what you observe now?
I can say that I have observed there was a camaraderie that was amongst pastors and preachers coming up. And I'm not saying that that's completely gone now, but I am saying that it was different to watch some of those guys who are now, as the old folk would say, a blessed memory, the late Spurgeon Creighton,
Yeah.
The late E. Mitchell Millette,
Yeah.
the late Joseph Jesse Howe, some of those guys who were larger than life figures, even for me.
Absolutely.
There was a camaraderie. And again, I'm not saying that it's gone completely, but I'm noticing a shift. And even with Pastor Credit's death, it sparked in some preachers that we've got to get back to that. We've got to start encouraging one another, just checking on one another, being there for one another. So that's one shift that I've seen in the preaching ministry. But with church culture, of course, it was a different day, in the early 90s, even the early 2000s. And now we are in 2021. And let's face it, church is changing. It is not what it once was. Now, I am a stickler for the message remaining the same, and that we can't throw away all of the methods. I know some people want to, go so modern that we are literally almost offering God strange fire. But I am a stickler for the message being the same. It's got to be about Christ. And that even if methods shift a bit, we don't need to veer. We don't need to veer so far that we are like the world. So those are some of the changes that I can say that I've seen over, the course of my 32 years of life, and being in church all of those years.
Now, brothers and sisters, you may think he looks younger than 32, but trust me, this is a grown man. And this is a grown man with his lovely wife, Erin, who they had their second child. We're going to get into that in a couple of minutes, because we're going to ask you something as it relates to that. But the shift that you were talking, changes that you observed, now you've observed that in your time.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine the observation of my time and your father's time.
Yeah.
And even your father-in-law, Reverend Evan Gray of the Macedonia Church.
Mm-hmm.
But the camaraderie and the fellowship.
Yeah.
And you don't have to say this because I would.
Okay.
You ain't obligated to say anything, but I would. It's basically been tainted by, I guess, when it comes down to your club, your crew, your boys.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. And the lessons that I've learned were not my boys and my crew. Mm-hmm. It was basically running to the older preachers. You lift up E. Mitchell Millette, you lift up Joseph J. Howe. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that you've observed that is telling in every sense of the word. Now, considering his own act, we talked about modern times, but I want to ask you this, Pastor, considering the Black Lives Matter movement.
Okay.
Because this is basically in your generation. That is not to say that I'm not active in whatever I say about it, mm-hmm. or certainly not inactive, whatever I say about it. And the millenniums, what thoughts and approach do you approach from a biblical point of view? Because remember now, there was a few years ago in which there were preachers and churches that were marching, and the people from the Black Lives Matter movement said, you had your time, get out the way. So how's your approach to that as it relates to the generation that's coming up? Not just your generation, but even the generation that is younger than you.
Yeah. That's a great question. I think that the church cannot allow those who do not know God to hijack what we have been called and commissioned to do, which is reaching the least, the last, the lost, the looked over, and the left out. I appreciate the movement, but I wrestle with it because of some of its unbiblical, ungodly ways, and some of the lifestyles that we promote as a result of it. And I can't speak for anybody else, but I know what I preach and what I teach at New Jerusalem, and I try my best to stand on those principles. I do think that the church has a place in the movement. I think that we've been called to reach people. Now, is every pastor going to be out there on the front lines like that? Not necessarily. I know that that's not my bent in ministry. And I would never fool myself. Y'all not gonna see me with picket signs and all that. I can fight in another way. I try to encourage our congregation, all the time about these things. I speak truth to power, whether it be on the Republican side or the Democratic side, because I know both have their issues and have their problems. And the only party that I'm for is the Jesus party. I think that we have a responsibility to stand on that. But I believe that the movement, we can't let the movement be hijacked. We've got to stand, the church, especially knowing our history, that the Black church was really formed and came out of resistance because of the fact that we were not welcome to worship with our white brothers and sisters. So I think that the church has to do its due diligence in standing up and not allowing the world to dictate how we're going to lead into the future as far as racial relations are concerned.
I appreciate your response to that, because Dr. King went through that same thing.
Okay.
He got himself involved, and there were a group that felt that he should step aside. But then when he, of course, came against the war in Vietnam, there were clergy who were in opposition to Dr. King. It should also be made clear that Malcolm X, the Nation of Islam, when they were talking about oppression, the yell on the street in New York was, "Yeah, but y'all ain't doing nothing. Y'all just talking." So it got it from both ends of the spectrum as relates to the resistance. So with the resistance situation, that causes, the church has always been, I would imagine, Pastor, and has always been in conflict with something that relates to the world and its injustice. It's always, and it always will.
Always, yeah.
Now, let me ask you this, Pastor. Generational lines. You as a young preacher, you as a young pastor. When I first came to Bethlehem, 5 days before my 37th birthday, and I had a few people tell me, "You like a son to me." Now, at the time when I was 37, I looked younger than 37.
Okay.
So, how do you have you been hit with that kind of situation?
Of course.
And how do you assess that in terms of ministry to people like that?
I'll be honest. I faced that coming into the pastorate of New Jerusalem. There were some that did not vote for me, and they told me, and I appreciate the candor and the honesty of those members. They told me flat out, "Listen, I didn't vote for you because I didn't think that you would be able to handle some of these older folk who have been here and entrenched in their ways and all of that little stuff." And some of them have had to since apologize to me because they found out that they were not dealing with a novice in ministry. Although I had never pastored prior to the call to New Jerusalem, I had already been in ministry for 20 years. So I was not new to, and then I had plenty of mentors. Of course, my pastor, Dr. Eric Charles Millett, who was mentored by one of the greats, as we both know, and even my father, of course, and their training, their tutelage allowed me to be able to weather, and even more so my father, because let's see, you say you were 37, Dad was 30.
Yeah, we're 7 years apart. Absolutely.
7 years apart, yes, sir. And he and I were the same age when we got called to our first churches. And they said the same thing of my father. "Oh, we got a boy. We're going to mold him." But my father walked into Mount Carmel with a wife and 2 children. I, on the other hand, walked into New Jerusalem with a fiance.
Yeah.
I didn't have a family as of yet, but I walked in with a firmness to let them know I'm not going to be a pushover, but I'm also not going to be pushed over. I'm going to lead with love, but I also understand the other end, of the spectrum as well. And it's been fruitful, I must say. The membership, though some of them were a little resistant, many of them have come on board. Like, we thank God for the Lord sending that 30-year-old, who's almost 33 now, but that 30-year-old to come. And hey, I've learned just love the people. It's not always easy, but you got to love the people and treat them because they're God's sheep, not ours. So I'm trying my best to do that and remember that. And it has been fruitful as a result of that.
And so that you would know and never feel alone, the resistance never stops. No matter what, no matter how many senior pastors say, I've been in this thing for X amount of years.
Yes, sir.
Resistance never stopped. If it did, there would be no wealth of information to be stronger to press on to what's coming after that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So that's important. Now, again, my guest tonight, Reverend Adrian Deshaun Reid, who is my guest, who I'm honored to have as my guest this evening to be a part of this. I just want to let everyone know that our guests in the ensuing weeks, you should know that on next Wednesday will be Pastor David Wright of the New Grace Tabernacle Christian Center, Brooklyn, New York, just signed a deal where he will have his own radio podcast. And then the week following Pastor Wright, we will have Pastor Cynthia McCants of the Cathedral of New Gethsemane East, which is in Long Island. Of course, her pastor and her husband, Bishop Jason McCants. And then following that, we will have a tremendous educator by the name of Jolanda Headley, who graduated from Alliance Theological Seminary and who has her own Academy of Music, and she's a lecturer as well as a motivational speaker. She will be on. I was in class with her at Alliance, when she's a tremendous person, and she will give us some good information, particularly for those of you who are interested in the arts. And then on May the 12th, we got to put this in, Reverend Al Sharpton of the National Action Network will be on Insight as well. So we're looking forward to that. And Derek, whatever else you got to add to as we move on, then we'll go from there. Now, let me ask you this. Your situation was unique. You came there with your fiance. Here's the thing. You came there with a combination of things.
Okay.
Your mother and your father came there with 2 children at the time. Me and Mrs. Camp came with 2 children at the time. They're already family orientated and family made. Mm-hmm. You come in, fiance, getting married, and then the children come. Now, look at these pictures here. Now, that's his lovely wife, Erin Reid, and she's a tremendous person, beautiful person. Look at that. Look at that. You can't beat passion in the middle of the aisle. So there they are, expressing their love to one another. And I mean, that's just a wonderful shot, man. You can't make up stuff like this. That's just a wonderful shot. As these pictures continue to roll, Reverend Reid, oh man, now is this the one your father calls, your father-in-law called Chip?
Yes, sir. That's Chip right there.
All right. So there he is, right there in the arms of his dad. And as the pictures continue to move, I love this one because that's going to say a lot. Yeah. And that's a picture that has to be maintained in the family fortress.
Yes, sir.
So that people can be able to look at that 100 years from now, and their children and their children's children and their children's children.
Yeah.
Pastor Reid has known. Oh man, listen, you can't. This is just beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I can hear everybody saying, "Oh," and I want you all to know I can't see your comments, and I'm not looking for them. But some of you make comments like, "I can't hear you. The microphone's too low. We can't see you." So just please try to follow us as much as you can. My daughters, here's his mom and dad. Cherie Reid, she has always been one of the most intelligent women. My wife has always dearly loved her and always dearly respected her. And of course, Bishop Edward Reid, at the time that Reid and I came out, there was this, it was different, as you said, Pastor Reid, because We came in tough, but we came in laid back, not trying to overstep some senior pastor.
Yeah, yeah,
That was the difference.
yeah.
And it was also that, and here's your siblings.
Yes, sir.
Now, your sister, y'all look like twins, you and your sister.
Yeah, that's what they all say.
They look like twins. And Eugene, all of them have known Asia and Nisha for years, and they've come up together. So good to see them as well. Look at this picture of a really solid, studied, well-read Pastor Adrian Reid. Now, considering that you came in with all of that, the adjustments that your wife had to make, and children along the way, along with the call, along with the responsibility and the assignment at the church, has that added pressure? Not stress, pressure, because stress is something that we work through. How would you respond to that?
I would be lying if I said that I am not dealing with pressure. I put up a post on Friday on Facebook. I was slated to preach up in Syracuse for Northeastern District's 7 Last Sayings. And this is something I've done years prior to becoming a pastor. And I was tired, to be quite honest, just tired. Been running and trying to balance the pastorate and the family. And our newborn, he's 2 months old now, just about 2 months old. And he keeps us up at night. Whereas AJ or Chip, he would sleep through the night. This new guy, Austin, he's
like the way you said this new guy.
this new guy. He's cut from a different cloth. He said, y'all not sleeping. So that has been, I mean, it's a joy, but it's pressure, to try and balance, and then responsibilities with members who pass and things of that nature, and trying to balance. And I thank God for an understanding church. I gotta say that. One thing I try to do is be as grateful and thankful to New Jerusalem as much as possible. Usually every Sunday, they are hearing something about my thanks and my love. Even in Bible study, when I close out, I let them know how much I'm grateful for them and how much I love them and appreciate them. They allow me to be the husband and father I need to be. They're always reminding me, Pastor. No, I stopped by the church Saturday, had AJ or Chip with me. And I was getting out the car. My chairperson of trustees is driving up on the lot, and she rolls her window down. She looks at me and she says, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, I'm literally just coming to give y'all some information I'm going on," because I knew what she was saying. She saw my post the day before. She was concerned about me. And she was also thankful that my wife had given me the words to say, stay home. And I'm learning God doesn't give us helpmeets for no reason. We have to use that wisdom to listen to them, because God speaks through them to often minister to us. And, the pressure has been there, but I thank God for my wife, because she is a trooper. She helps me in such amazing ways when it comes to the ministry. A lot of things we would not have at New Jerusalem. I didn't know anything about conference calls. I didn't have to do that stuff, but she does that with her job. So she's the one that said, babe, use this, for right now until we can get a hold of the live stream, and in so many other aspects. So, I often joke with New Jerusalem and tell them I really think they love her more than they love me. And I always say to them, please continue to do that, because your love for her will allow you to be able to tolerate me when you don't always like me. So I thank God for her. And of course, these two boys, but it has been pressure. I wouldn't even sit here and tell you otherwise. It has been pressure, but I'm making it by the grace of God.
Now, considering you have two sons, live in the United States of America, the trial of George Floyd.
Yeah.
what does that present to you emotionally, considering that you have children, and particularly two African-American boys?
It is a certain, not, I won't say fear, because I'm not trying to be spooky and spiritual, but the
Sure,
Bible does
sure.
say, that God hasn't given us the spirit of fear, but there is always a level of apprehension, nervousness, because it was George Floyd then. It could be one of my boys or even me, now or in a couple of years, one of my boys. So, um, every night, usually I put Chip down to sleep. But before I put him down, I'm praying for him, and I'm praying for his mind, that God would crown him with wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. We're already noticing he might have a call to preach or something. He's very musical and all that other stuff. So it's something that the Lord wants him to do. But I'm praying God's protection over him, and of course over his brother, because I don't believe that these things are going to die down. We can do all we can. We can fight. You can't remove racism from the heart of a person. Only the Holy Spirit can work on that. We can pick it and argue and fuss and fight all we want to, but if it's ingrained in the heart and the mind, only God can pull that out of a person. And my prayer is that God would give my boys, not this, oh, I've got to walk a certain way, I've got to talk a certain way in order to not get killed, or I got to act like I'm white, no, be who you are.
Right.
I don't lay down my blackness for anybody. I know I'm black. I know what I am, know who I am. I'm not gonna lay it down for nobody, and I don't want them to do that. I want them to be genuinely who they are. But that nervousness, of course, is there because I don't know what the future is gonna hold. But my prayer is that God would keep his hedge of protection as he has done with me, my brothers. I pray that God would do the same thing for my boys. My older brother has a son as well. I'm praying God's protection over my nephew because, whether you're light skinned or dark skinned, that doesn't even matter. If you black, it's almost like you're a target. And so my prayer is for protection. I pray that every night, every night.
The late comic Paul Mooney once says that every black person who thinks because of their status or their pigmentation is that they're going to eventually receive their nigger wake-up call. That's what he said. Mm-hmm. So that would certainly be the crux of that. Now, you talked about being mentored by your dad and many others. And how important is it for you where there will be those who, if they haven't already, come to you for advice and for you to mentor someone else that's coming up?
Pastor, I have been blessed. I've been blessed. Sometimes I wonder why people value my opinion. And people can tell you whatever, but I'm learning, don't believe your own press. Because
absolutely,
you can be whatever one day, and then the next day that's not the case. But there have been a lot of young guys who have literally gravitated to me, and they're always asking, man. I had one Good Friday send me a sermon that he preached, and said, man, I just want you to check out my sermon and let me know if I was on the right path. Had another brother of mine, he wants to do a young preachers conference, and he's like, man, you were the only person I could think of, and I know you got some suggestions of others that can come along and help us with this, but he said you were the first person that I thought of to be a part of this. And there are so many that value my opinion and I guess my experience in ministry, and I'm grateful for that. I'm always trying to caution myself that I make sure I'm leading them in the right direction, never trying to go against whatever their pastors have set in place. I'm always reminding them, hey, I'm telling you based on my experience, but ultimately the final authority in your ministry is your pastor. And I'm not saying that in this manhandling type of way, but you are under the subjection of that leader. I never forget my father's words at my initial sermon. He said, he did just like this and said, as long as my hands are open, your ministry is free to go, to grow, and to flourish. He said, but the moment that I close my hands, that means that's it. Your ministry is finished. And you and I both know that that old school way is, you don't disrespect leadership, because, it'll be bad on the future of your ministry. And I'm thankful that in some way, my life, my ministry has been one that people desire to look to for encouragement, for help. I got guys that'll hit me up and say, man, recommend a book. What are you reading? Just give me a book to read. And I'll try to throw, books out, even though somebody said to me recently, they thought that this was one of those backdrops. I said, no, this is actually,
that's it. Yeah.
There's literal books.
You don't have to tell me that's the background. I know that's you. That's
right. Yeah. But I try to encourage them. And I'm thankful that people look to me for that. I just try to guide them in the way that I know is right biblically, to help them so that they don't make some of the mistakes that I made. Because, hey, I wasn't perfect. Pastor Millette will tell you. My dad will tell you. I didn't dot every I, didn't cross every T. Both of them sat me down at points, and I'm better today because they didn't play favoritism with me. They treated me, Pastor Millette and my father, even with Pastor Millette, he never got involved. Whenever Pastor Millette had to, in a sense, chastise me or whatever the case, my father never, half the time, my father didn't know stuff was going on.
Yeah.
He never interfered, because when he, in a sense, gave me over to Pastor Millette, it was like, hey, man, he's in your hands now. And I know you come from good stock. So that training has helped me to be able to encourage those in my generation. Hey, man, don't do this. Don't do that. Do this. And you'll be able to flourish in ministry.
And when you brought up the illustration of your father with his hands, there may be some preachers in your age group and older who may not feel the value of their pastor's authority no longer matters.
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
I say this, it does matter. Here's why I say that. Now that I'm a pastor, I understand things differently. And this is not an arrogant statement, I am the resident theologian at New Jerusalem Baptist Church. They hired me, and if you want to use that word hire, but they called me to serve as pastor, not any of the associate ministers. So, it is not their responsibility to preach every Sunday. It's my responsibility to preach every Sunday. And I have had, and all of them, two are old enough to be my parent. One is old enough to be my grandparent. But I made it very clear when I walked in the door, you are not. Either we're going to operate a certain way with a level of decorum and respect, or preaching will be limited. And you know how I am. I'm honest like you. I just tell the truth and let the chips fall where they may. And it's because of what I was taught, that there has to be a level of respect. There has to be a line drawn that this person is the pastor. You are an associate, and your obligation is not to be a flunky. God hasn't called you to be a flunky, but God has called you to serve that pastor, because one day you may sit in the same seat that pastor sits in, and you're going to have associates under you, and how you handle your pastor will dictate how your associates are going to handle you. I found that out too.
Oh yeah.
I have found that out. Some of the seeds that I've sown have come back on me, and I have been very apologetic to Pastor Millette and even to my father as a result of that, because you don't burn bridges if somebody helps you get over. And I thank God for the relationship that I have with Pastor still to this day. We talk, maybe not all the time now. We don't get to see each other all the time, but I try to stay in contact with him as much as possible. He already knows, listen, You know, our COVID threw off fellowship, but he already knows he has a standing date at New Jerusalem every year. And, you know, it's important to just remember that God has called you to serve, because one day you might sit in the seat. I think it was H.B. Charles that said that pastors serve by leading. And then he was referring to deacons and said that deacons lead by serving. And that could be the same with elders in a church under the leadership of a pastor, that it is that pastor's authority or responsibility to serve by leading. On the other hand, it's your responsibility to lead by serving, and you serve that pastor and your ministry will flourish as a result of that faithfulness.
Now, you said a whole lot there, Pastor Reid. I know you don't duck any questions. You don't duck any controversies.
Nah.
He said, nah. You don't duck anything. And as you had said to me over the phone one time in a conversation that we had a few years ago, Pastor Kent, my father always taught me just to speak my mind, which I do respect. People don't speak their mind. Some people don't speak their mind. They only speak their behind, which means they ain't saying nothing front, but only from the back.
Yeah.
The aspect of, and I loved when you said, I'm learning so much. And the learning process for being a pastor is just, it continues.
Yeah.
No matter what numbers we throw out there in the years that we've been preaching, the life experience helps to shape that.
Yeah.
And how we lead in a certain way.
Yes, sir.
So now, you with all the, and you love to read. You love to read. What books? Well, let me just ask this question. I know you love to read, but I also know you probably have observed people who don't read. And that doesn't mean, you can always tell when people don't read. You don't have to use big words, but you can always tell when they don't read.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In your generation, do you find that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's a concern.
Yeah, it's a major concern. One of the things that I'm always encouraging guys and even gals in my generation, hey, you have to read. What are you preaching if you're not reading? You know, and I'm always, it's always, my wife will tell you, I'm always reading something. Sometimes I'm laying in bed and I'm on the phone and I'm just scrolling, you know, through an article or whatever, just something to you know, get my mind together, because I don't ever want to be a preacher that people don't want to hear. You know, I want to be that guy that when I stand, people, they want to hear what's coming out of my mouth, and not to praise me, but to literally say, what a God, because they hear the voice of God as preaching is going forward. So I try to encourage guys, you got to read.
So what are the books you've read and that you would recommend to this audience? Books that have helped you, inspired you, and encouraged you. What would you recommend?
I did jot down a few. I got a list of books. I'll start with this one first. Prayer was not a strong point for me. I know how you a preacher and prayer ain't strong. You know, some people they so super spiritual and sanctified and stuff. But there's a little book by a guy named Donald S. Whitney called Praying the Bible. And it's 5 o'clock. It literally revolutionized my perspective on prayer, because in the book, Donald Whitney is suggesting that we ought to pray the scriptures. He's saying that the best way to get in a habit of prayer is to make sure that you are going through the word of God in prayer. So one of the things that he does in the book is he tells us as an exercise to take a psalm, could be your favorite psalm, Psalm 23, Psalm 27, and walk through it. And as you're reading it, start praying off of what you read. And man, when I started really like doing the exercises and walking through, man, that book literally revolutionized my perspective on prayer, and it has heightened my prayer. That prayer doesn't have to be conventional, I believe. You can pray in your car, you can pray in the grocery store, you know, you can pray wherever you are, but that book literally helped me in a major way as far as prayer is concerned. Several other books I would throw out, Any Preacher or Pastor on Preaching, on Pastoring by H.B. Charles. Those two books have been a great help and an encouragement. Books that are not necessarily in maybe the theological line could be the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, rather, by Stephen Covey. That's another book. H3 Leadership, for those that are trying to lead, by Brad Lomenick. That's another good book. And then literally Dr. Kimberly Credit's books. I just, have been walking through the one on new pastors, 13 crucial lessons for the new pastor. And I've been walking through that book, and it's been a great encouragement to me, especially to know that for her, she had only been pastoring, I think, about 7 years, 6 or 7 years.
Yeah. Her journey was very interesting.
Oh my goodness. I'm amazed at all that she did in the short time that she did it.
Yeah.
Some of us will live a lifetime and never get to where she was. But, just reading that, and then I didn't get to start it yet, but the other book that she has, Prophetic Apologetics, that's another book I'm looking forward to perusing through. And I mean, there's so many others. We would be here all night if I tried to tell, all of the books that have been a blessing, but these are just a few of them that have encouraged me over the time that I've been in ministry.
Now, let me ask you this, Pastor. This is an open forum, and you don't ever have to be image conscious or pretentious with me. I think you know me long enough.
Yes, sir.
So, other than the great spirituals that you listen to, what are some of the other music other than
okay,
Kirk Franklin, other than name me some. I mean, because there's always other kinds of genres of music that inspires your study and your reading and your thinking.
Yeah, I love Frank Sinatra.
Now, how'd you come to know that? How'd you come to love him?
Okay, one day I was literally just sitting at the desk this couple of years ago, preparing a sermon, and I put on, oh God, what is this thing called? Pandora. I put on Pandora.
Oh, yeah.
And Pandora just goes through different things and some Frank Sinatra stuff. Now, we've all heard a Frank Sinatra song. It just, no matter who you are, they've been in movies and television, all that stuff. And a song came on, and I'm just like, man, I've always been a lover of smooth jazz. Not that smooth jazz is the genre that Frank Sinatra sung, but the approach was just like, man, this is good studying music. This is music that can calm you, and get you ready and prepared. And I know some people say, well, you need to listen to gospel. Nah, I don't listen to gospel to study. I just want folk to know that if they do that, I don't do that. I'm listening to some smooth jazz, or I'm listening to some Frank Sinatra, or something. Now, I'm not listening to nothing crazy, 2 Chainz and all that other stuff. They only go, I ain't listening to that stuff, but I'm listening to stuff.
But you're not gonna listen to 2 Chainz.
No, I ain't gonna listen to 2 Chainz. Not while I'm preparing my sermon.
Oh, right. I understand.
Not while I'm listening. Not while the sermon. I don't want to be corrupted and all that stuff. And you know how sometimes you hear something and then you start to write down what you're hearing. So I don't want to be writing down the wrong thing. So but Frank Sinatra, smooth jazz. And my father is the one that got all of his children to be lovers of smooth jazz. You almost can't ride with my father and not hear some kind of smooth jazz. He is a lover. And I'm sure you remember CD 101.9.
Yes, I do.
That station, my father, I'm mad that they took it away. Then they have 88.3. But CD 101.9 was it. And so that's where my love for that came about. So that's what I listened to.
Now, did you listen to Sinatra as it concerns his vocals in different eras?
I have. His latter years, his earlier years, and all in between, to hear number one is consistency. But obviously the shifts and changes within his voice, but never, once you heard Frank Sinatra, you heard Frank Sinatra. That voice that they called C.L. Franklin the $1 million voice of a preacher. Well, I believe that Frank Sinatra had $1 million voice. You can't take that away from him.
Yeah, the Columbia years in the late 30s and the 40s, the Capitol years in the 50s, and going all the way up into from the time that he died. So you can see the shift. So again, I want to remind the audience that my guest tonight, the Reverend Adrian Reid, the pastor of New Jerusalem Baptist Church in Brentwood, again, to acknowledge those that are coming for the next few weeks. Our guest that will be for the next few weeks is Reverend David Wright, the senior pastor of the New Grace Tabernacle Christian Center in Brooklyn. And then, of course, following Reverend Wright will be Pastor Cynthia McCants, the senior pastor of the Cathedral of New Gethsemane East. And then, of course, following McCants is Sister Jolanda Headley, who will, again, is Joe's Academy of Music in New York, and that's in St. Albans. Tremendous teacher. I would recommend her highly. Now, Pastor, and then, of course, Reverend Sharpton on May the 12th from the National Action Network. Now, Reverend Reid, give us, give closing words of encouragement to those who are viewing. And before he does that, I want to thank the staff of Insight, the Reverend Derek Jackson, Linda Atkinson Kendall, who is a deacon in training. I want to thank my daughters, Asia Camp Jackson, and my youngest daughter, LC, last child, Niger Elizabeth Camp. And I want to thank them for playing a part in this. And so, Pastor Reid, give us closing remarks and give us prayer as well.
Okay. In closing, first of all, let me say thank you, Pastor Camp. This has been a joy to share. Again, I apologize about my voice and all that stuff, but I certainly did not want to not be a part of this tonight. It's been a joy to do things like this over the course of this pandemic. The Lord is stretching us and allowing us to do things that we've never done before. And so I say, please, sir, keep doing this because more people need to know the story of pastors and civil rights leaders and others who, yeah, we can read it in books for those who are a little more famous, but why not have that more intimate time of conversation? My encouragement to those who are watching, stay faithful. I've been encouraging our congregation. This is not the time to run and hide. This is not the time to run away from Christ. It's not the time to run away from his church. It's time for us to stand as the church. We're living in perilous times, but nevertheless, God is still with us. And with anything, the pandemic has to be over after a while. I know it's going to have lingering effects, but we trust God. We believe God. I've been encouraging many of our members who have called me and who are going through, and certainly want to encourage rather each of you.
Thank you.
Just remain faithful. Sometimes I told a member this earlier. She said, Pastor, you got to write that down. I said to her that sometimes the burden is the blessing. You know, sometimes we are blessed by the burdens that come in our lives that we don't always understand them, but they make us stronger. So take those burdens and keep growing as a result of them. Praying for your faithfulness, that God would bless you, and certainly want to, leave in closing by praying for Pastor Camp, you and the Bethlehem Nation, that God would continue to bless you all during this time. Thank y'all for what y'all are doing. And I know that greatness is going to come as a result of this. All right. Ready to pray?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we thank you for the all-sufficient prophet, priest, and king by the name of Jesus. Thank you for that third day morning that he rose from the dead for our justification. Thank you that we are able to be partakers of what Christ has done on our behalf. Now, Lord, we are some with burdens, some with cares, some with concerns, but we bring them to you knowing that you are able to handle them all. Praying now, Father, for every person that is viewing, that you would bless their homes and their families. Praying especially for Pastor Camp and the Bethlehem Nation, that you would continue to bless them, bless Pastor Camp's family. I pray that you would keep them strong and healthy, even in the midst of these uncertain times. God, we bless your name for the time that you have allowed us to come together just in fellowship. Thank you for the virtual space that we've been able to occupy tonight. And we pray that we would not take these moments in vain, or that they would not be in vain, but that they would be fruitful, and that people would be blessed and encouraged and strengthened by them. This we ask and pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Pastor Reid. Brothers
Yes,
and
sir.
sisters, we're going to let Pastor Reid continue. I know I can hear the children in the background, and I love to hear late Reverend Jacob Underwood, who's retired pastor of a
Yes,
great
sir.
Baptist church, said to me when I preached at his church and there were some children crying, and he leaned over to me and says, it's never a disturbance when
Never.
Children cry, because it means life in the pew.
Yes,
And
sir.
so I want to thank you so much, and thank you for being on this, and going to have you back again. I'm going to have you back again another year or two to hear what your conversation going to be like.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be different. I'm sure it'll be different. Bless you, Pastor. Thank you,
God
man.
bless you, my friend.
I appreciate it.
Take care.
You too.